Well, the idea is to not only support what currently exists, but to put out money for things that are new. When we started with the Lavender Festival, they were new. And we helped them get started, and now they don't. Well, I'm sure they could say, well, we would still like money from you, but everybody can say that.
Yeah.
But basically, we helped them get up and running, and then they got to do it on their own. We will not pay for put up money for capital campaign, to cover any deficit from anything else, to send anybody for schooling or scholarship or anything like that. I don't know. We have a few other things. I can't remember what they all are.
Well,
but if you wanted to know, you could look at our website and prowl through all that prose and find what we will fund and won't fund.
Right, and the criteria for a project or the criteria for funding. And I mean, I think this is really wonderful. So I'm learning quite a bit as you're talking here.
Well,
this is
the
great.
other thing is when people hear culture, they tend to think art.
Right.
Okay, so there's visual art, there's performing arts, and that's where it tends to stop for a lot of people. Well, the Cultural Trust, that's Oregon Cultural Trust, defines culture as arts, the two categories I mentioned, heritage and humanities. So it's a lot of things that are covered in there.
And when they say humanities, what do they mean?
Oh, that was the problem when we were writing the bylaws, the plan. We could define arts, that was easy. We could define heritage, that was pretty easy. And then we all stumbled over humanities. And after much research, looking in encyclopedias, Wikipedia, everything you could think of.
College curriculum.
Yeah, we kind of said, humanities are arts and heritage.
Well, essentially, yeah. I mean, because, it's literature and it's writing
well,
and
it
all
can
those
be
things.
philosophy,
Of course, yes.
economics, sociology, anthropology. Well, anthropology might fit into heritage, but we found out that humanities would just cover everything. But since the Cultural Trust lists them as arts, heritage, and humanities, we do the same thing.
I really like that. So, I mean, so it leaves it a little bit open-ended, but what it really does is it's pretty broad, so that I would think that it would encourage a lot of people maybe to apply, or at least to think about taking a look at whether or not their organization or their project qualifies.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you take the Lavender Festival, for instance, I mean, growing plants, well, that's heritage, because that's agriculture, which is the basis and the backbone of this county. So, I mean, somebody could say, well, we didn't grow lavender here, but that's really not the point. It's taking the heritage aspect of agriculture and simply growing something else, which you can say about the wine industry, too.
Which is kind of cool at the Lavender Festival when you see the guy who has the still.
Oh, yes.
And takes all the lavender and puts it in the still and is distilling it. That's obviously a very ancient process that gives you moonshine or a number of other things. But
probably some of the things, other products from this county.
Exactly.
Well, there's beer and wine.
Well, of course, but I mean, that is really heritage. And I think, when I first saw it, I thought, wow, that's cool. But for kids to be able to see that. But then, of course, I know that the Lavender Festival, for example, has really blossomed into so much more. There's, the whole plein air painting, and there's, all the dance and all the things and music and all the things that happen. So that's a great example, really, I guess, of humanities.
Well, yes, absolutely.
That's sort of interesting. So have you done anything then in terms of funding anything with philosophy? That sounds kind of interesting.
Ooh, I don't know. I can't answer that question.
Okay.
Well, we have funded on 2 occasions Barbara Drake's Terroir Creative Writing Festival.
Oh, right. Okay, perfect.
So some of that fits in there. That's certainly a humanities subject. And her emphasis there is creative writing, which sort of paralyzes me because I can't think of anything creative to write. But if you tell me I have a topic I have to write on, then it's easy. But she said to me, oh, but it is not just fiction, because you can write your memoirs. And, well, there you are.
Well, and I think
that's your heritage.
Creative, creative nonfiction. I mean, if somebody sets out to write their memoirs, That's pretty creative
Yes,
nonfiction
and if
because
you've read-
you're choosing, you're choosing the lens through which you're portraying this. Most people typically don't put themselves in a bad light. You blame it on your mom or your rotten first husband, but you come out smelling like a rose because you're the star of your own life, right?
Well, Barbara has written some very interesting books. And one of them that I simply loved, I think it was called Peace at Heart. It was about she and her husband's first 10 years at their farm in Yamhill. And I've given it, I've loaned it to quite a few people.
Loaned it and never had it returned.
Oh, yeah, I had it back.
Okay, you made them sign the card.
Yes, and the other thing is, having been a teacher for years, and knowing that if you put a book down, a kid can pick it up, and then it's gone. And if you put your name on the first page, all you have to do is rip the first page out.
Sure.
So what I would do was I'd hold the book really tight, and I'd write my last name up here. Here, here, and here. There was no way a kid could say it was their book. I mean, I had my name all over it.
Well, you learned. So you taught, and was that in New York that you taught?
Yes.
And then did you move out here after you retired?
I haven't retired
Oh,
yet.
you haven't retired. Okay. But
I'm going down to the last minute.
You still haven't retired from teaching? Do you still teach?
Well, not the same way. When I was in New York, I taught high school math.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's not, oh my goodness. It was easy for me. And it was pretty easy for most of the students, too. But I left that kind of teaching quite a while ago. And when we came out here, I got a job in a museum, and I developed a program there which would take stuff, lots of stuff, and a person into the classroom to present the subject. And I realized after about 7 years that I was getting pretty tired of the drive to work.
Ooh.
Yeah, it
Where was
fun.
that? Where did you
It was
do
in
it?
Washington County, but there's a lot of traffic in Washington
Oh,
County.
of course. Which museum did you work
It
for?
was the Washington County Museum.
Okay.
And I also realized that, you can only go so far in a small place. And so I said, I'm going to try this on my own. So 10 years ago, I started my own program that does that. And if you want to get to me via email, you go to The Nomadic Teacher.
The Nomadic Teacher.
Right.
Okay.
And so I drag this stuff into, well, we've been into 5 different counties.
What kind of stuff do you take?
Historical stuff.
Okay.
Specifically, Oregon history from before we had any reckoning of time, the Native Americans, up to about the year 1900.
So you take like actual artifacts.
Oh, yes.
And then you talk to the kids. What ages do you address?
It's typically 4th grade because that's where it is, where local history is in the state curriculum. But some schools move things around a little bit, so we also get into the 3rd grade and the 5th grade.
Yeah, my kids went to school here, and I remember Oregon history was definitely the 4th grade. Yeah.
So I've been at the high school level, the college level, the elementary school level, and I am not going to go to the kindergarten level. I know
No.
that one.
Yeah. No, everybody's always got to go to the bathroom. Nobody's paying attention.
They're like this all the while.
Of course. Well, that's sort of a fascinating thing. So that actually ties right in with your work with the coalition because
Yes.
you're a preservationist and
Yes.
interested in preserving heritage and
Yes.
okay.
Whenever I've been on the board, I've been the one who basically was the voice for heritage.
Okay. And do you feel like that's well represented at this point?
Oh, it could always be well representative to a greater extent. I mean, that's what my love is. So, of course, I'd like to see it represented more. But it's hard because most people look at history as boring.
Well, unless it's made interesting. And I think, probably for most, especially for kids, what makes history interesting is the teacher. The person.
And the hands-on part. They can
Right.
take things and they have to do things. It's not just, oh, that feels nice.
Years ago, and this goes back to when my kids were young, they had it must have been one of those sort of early-ish computer games, but it was called the Oregon Trail.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I've played it.
And they had to buy the flour, and they had to do this and that, and their wheel came off the wagon. They played that game for, months, I don't know. And I thought, what a really wonderful thing, because when I was young, I was really, really interested in reading novels or books or historical books about, the pioneers and the Oregon Trail and all that. But I don't think maybe kids don't do that so much these days, but having those interactive types thing, that does make history come alive for them. So,
Yeah, that's one of the things they like. I tell some things that are, well, it's not going to be written in a history book, period.
exactly.
And that's what kids remember. And they just kind of giggle and laugh. And when they go out afterwards, I hear from the teacher, this is what they talked about afterwards. But anyway, that's just my story.
Like having to burn buffalo patties or something. I mean, stuff that kids would find gross. And,
Buffalo poop.
well, yeah. Well, there you go. Now, do you want to talk a little bit about, I know we're maybe coming to the end, do you want to talk a bit about the Oregon Days of Culture?
Well, it's something that the Cultural Trust established about 3 years ago, and they're making it a bigger and bigger project, and so they expect the coalitions to do something. And that was the task that I was assigned this year. Develop it,
Okay.
and I hope I can get the calendar on your station,
Oh, I'm sure you can.
right? It'll just be a list, but it'll tell you which days, what event, where, when. And if you want more information, go to our website, which will direct you to another website for the organization.
Well, I know that as part of that, the Downtown Association, the whole public art, Edwina Castle and I actually are putting together this Celebrate Public Art, which is going to be like sort of a performance.
That's right.
Sunday, October 2nd, and that will be like people from Linfield and the symphonic choir from the high school and the Yamhill Cultural Center, and a number of performers and dancers and people like that, and it's going to be at the Gormley Plaza.
Right. That's one of the highlights
Oh, good.
of
I'm
Yamhill
glad
County's
yeah.
Days of Culture.
Right.
And the other is some things at the Cultural Center. They're the two big things.
Okay, and where?
Oh, no, there's one more thing.
What is
and
the
I
other-
would be remiss if I didn't mention
Well,
it.
mention it.
Ken Austin is going to open up his garage that has
cars?
more than 30 vintage vehicles in it.
When is that going to be?
I think it's Thursday of that week between
Oh,
the 1st
wow.
through
I have
the
to
8th.
take my husband out to look at that.
Well, I'm pretty sure there are going to be some people at the door when it opens just
I'm
to see
sure.
because he only opens it under special occasions.
Oh, that's really amazing.
and I
sure.
sort of asked him nicely enough, I guess, and he said, okay.
Well, that's heritage.
Oh, it certainly
Oh,
is.
that's amazing. Wow.
Some of the vehicles might even have been driven around here.
Maybe that's very possible. So that's something that's, I know, the 1st through the 8th of October,
Right.
and that people can go to the website of the Cultural Coalition.
Yes,
see-
Yamhill County Culture, our.org. It will be there, and it's also going to be, well, we sent out these kind of cards to a lot of places. It will be hopefully here, because I talked to somebody who runs this.
you can put it on the
here,
website, sure.
And that it would be on the radio station. And, well, the Oregon Cultural Trust is putting it out for the whole state.
Right.
So it will be listed there too. And I don't know, we took them to wineries and restaurants and a whole lot of places.
Okay, great. Well, so it sounds like, October is Culture Month then, is that what I'm given to understand?
I wouldn't say that. It's the Days of Culture because they chose that, and then it was the 8th of October that it was created.
Oh, perfect,
So
okay.
I don't know what year it was actually created.
Well, and we're pretty much out of time now, but I'll just say that also coincides rather perfectly this year, in fact, with the Art Harvest Studio
Oh, yes,
Tour.
that's listed as part of
which
what
is
the county is offering.
probably our big county-wide thing in the month of October that
Sure.
relates to art for sure.
Yeah.
So, well, Barbara, I want to thank you so much for being
Oh,
here
you're
today.
welcome. You see, I told you I could just talk and
Yeah.
talk about culture.
And see, and the notes were there, but you were yeah. Well, thanks so much.
Well, you're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Okay. We're finished?